The first thing Coach Wade Mercer said to Lena Brooks was, "Mom, this is a martial arts school, not a daycare waiting room." He said it loud enough for half the parents to hear, loud enough for half the 12-year-old son to hear, loud enough for her 12-year-old son to hear. And with that little smile some people wear when they are hoping everyone else will laugh before they have to admit they were being cruel. Lena looked up from the old wooden bench by the front windows, folded the permission slip she had been reading, and said, "Good to know. I was worried I had accidentally walked into a place that taught manners." That was the moment the room got quiet, not because anyone expected Lena Brooks to talk back, but because nobody at Harbor Ridge Combat Academy had ever seen anyone talk back to Wade Mercer and keep standing there like they had nowhere else to be. Harbor Ridge sat in a converted auto shop near the edge of Tacoma, Washington, squeezed between a tire place, a laundromat with 3 broken dryers, and a little diner where the waitress knew everybody's coffee order before they opened their mouths. It was not fancy, but it had character, and in that neighborhood, character counted for something. The front windows were always fogged in winter. The rubber mat smelled like disinfectant and sweat, and the walls were covered with framed photos of tournament winners, newspaper clippings, faded belts, and one giant sign above the mat that read, "Discipline builds character." Wade Mercer loved that sign. He pointed at it often. What he never seemed to understand was that discipline and humiliation were not the same thing, no matter how many times he tried to package one as the other. Lena had been bringing her son Isaiah to Harbor Ridge for nearly 8 months. She had signed him up after he got picked on at school for being quiet, for wearing thrift store sneakers, for being the kind of kid who would rather draw superheroes in the margins of his math homework than shove somebody in a hallway to prove he belonged. Lena did not want him learning how to fight because she dreamed of seeing him win trophies. She wanted him to learn how to stand up straight, look people in the eye, and understand that being soft-spoken did not mean he had to accept being treated like he was small. At first it seemed like the right place. The owner, Mr. Hahn, was older, gentle, and mostly stayed in the office handling paperwork and pretending not to notice the chaos of children sprinting through the lobby after class. The kids liked him because he kept peppermints in his desk drawer and called everyone champ. But Wade ran the evening classes, and Wade was the kind of man who believed a room only respected him if everyone in it was a little bit afraid of him. He was 42, broad-shouldered, always freshly shaved, always wearing a spotless black uniform with his name stitched in gold over the chest. His beard was trimmed with the precision of a man who spent more time looking in mirrors than he would ever admit. He had competed years ago, won a few regional titles, and somehow turned those trophies into a permanent excuse to act like every child who walked into that building had personally disappointed him. Parents loved him at first. He looked like the part. He spoke in a deep, confident voice. He used phrases like mental toughness and real-world consequences and "I don't babysit" excuses. The kind of parents who believed their kids were one stern lecture away from becoming Navy SEALs nodded along like he was handing down wisdom from a mountaintop. But Lena watched differently. She noticed Wade corrected some kids in private and embarrassed others in public. She noticed he called the white boys Buddy and Champ even after they messed up, while kids like Isaiah, Malik, and Elena got their mistakes announced to the entire room like breaking news. She noticed how his voice changed when he was frustrated, how he said certain names with a little more weight behind them. It was never enough for him to get caught in one clean moment, never one ugly sentence anybody could clip and play back. That was the trick of it. Wade knew how to stay just inside the lines. He could always say he was being tough. He could always say people were too sensitive. He could always say the kids needed to learn how the world worked. And some people, especially the people whose children never seemed to be on the receiving end of his toughness, were happy to believe him. Isaiah tried not to complain. That was the part that hurt Lena most. Every night after class, she would ask him how it went, and he would shrug and say, "Fine." Then he would buckle his seatbelt, stare out the passenger window, and go quiet for the whole ride home. Lena knew that kind of quiet for the whole ride home. Lena knew that kind of quiet. She had lived inside it herself once. It was the kind that came from learning people did not always want to hear what happened to you. So eventually you start telling yourself it was not worth saying. One Thursday night in late October, rain was tapping against the windows hard enough to make the whole building sound like it was being pelted with gravel. Lena got there early because her shift at the hospital had ended sooner than expected. She was still wearing navy scrubs under a long gray coat, her hair pulled into a low bun, and she had a paper cup of cheap coffee she had forgotten to drink. She took her usual place on the bench near the mat and watched the intermediate class begin. Isaiah stood near the back with Malik Carter, a skinny 14-year-old who had the fastest feet in the room but carried himself like he was trying to apologize for taking up space. Wade had them drilling roundhouse kicks. Again, Wade barked. The students reset. Again, Wade cooked. The students reset. Again. Malik's balance slipped on the third repetition, and his foot landed a little crooked. Not dangerously, not dramatically, just enough for Wade to sigh like the kid had personally ruined his evening. "Malik," Wade said, walking over slowly, "do you mean me to call your mother and ask if she taught you how to stand, or are you planning on figuring it out yourself?" A couple of boys laughed. Malik's face tightened, but he kept his eyes on the floor. "I got it, coach," he said. "No, you don't," Wade replied. "That's the problem. You think effort is the same thing as ability." Lena felt her fingers close around her coffee cup. Across the mat, a blond boy named Trevor missed the same kick twice in a row, nearly fell over the second time, and Wade just clapped him on the shoulder. "Shake it off, Trev. You'll get there." Lena looked around the room. A few parents saw it. She could tell by the way their eyes flicked from one kid to the other, then away again. But nobody said anything. Nobody ever did. Then Wade turned toward Isaiah. "Brooks," he called. Isaiah stepped forward. "Show Malik how it's done." "Brooks," he called. Isaiah stepped forward. "Show Malik how it's done." Isaiah blinked. "Me?" Wade gave a short laugh. "No, the other Brooks in the room. Yes, you." Isaiah moved into position. He was not the biggest kid, and he was not the loudest, but he had practiced that kick in the living room until Lena had threatened to put a dent in the wall on his birthday list. He spun, lifted his knee, turned his hips, and landed clean. It was not perfect, but it was good. Better than good, really. Wade stared at him for a second, and Lena saw something strange pass across his face. Surprise, maybe. Annoyance, definitely. "Your guard dropped," Wade said. "If this were real, you'd be on the ground." Isaiah's shoulders sank. Wade turned to the class. "That is what happens when people get praised for doing the minimum. They think one decent move makes them special." Lena stood before she even realized she'd made the decision. Her coffee cup rolled off the bench and tipped onto the floor, but she did not look at it. "Coach Mercer," she said. Wade glanced over, already irritated. "Class is in session, Miss Brooks." "I can see that." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I can also see you corrected Trevor like he made a mistake, and you corrected Malik and Isaiah like they were character flaws." The room froze. You could hear the rain. You could hear one of the younger kids breathing too fast because he thought somebody was about to get in trouble. Wade smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I push each student differently." "No," Lena said. "You pressure some of them differently." A parent named Donna Whitcomb, whose son wore a brand new uniform every week and somehow never had to stay late for push-ups, shifted in her chair and said, "Maybe Coach Wade just has high standards." Lena turned slightly toward her. "High standards are fine. Publicly tearing down children is not." Wade crossed his arms. "You know, Lena, this is exactly why some parents struggle with competitive environments. They mistake accountability for cruelty." Lena looked at him for a long second, then said, "And some instructors mistake cruelty for leadership because it is easier than earning respect." Nobody laughed that time. Wade's jaw worked like he was chewing on something bitter. "Mr. Mizda." Han opened his office door halfway, probably hoping the whole thing would dissolve if he looked concerned enough from a distance. But it did not dissolve. It had been sitting there too long, building up in the walls, in the kids who stopped raising their hands, in the parents who drove home angry and told themselves they would speak up next time. Wade stepped closer to the edge of the mat. "You want to discuss my teaching methods? We can do that after class." Lena nodded. "Fine. Privately," he added. "No," she said. "Not privately. You have been making examples out of other people's children in public. You do not get to hide behind an office door when someone finally calls it out." For the first time, Wade looked genuinely thrown off. Not scared exactly, but confused in the way bullies get confused when the person they picked does not follow the script. He had expected Lena to be embarrassed. He had expected her to lower her voice, apologize for making a scene and take Isaiah home early. Instead, she stood there in worn sneakers, hospital scrubs, and an old grey coat, looking at him like she had seen men like him before and had run out of reasons to be impressed. Wade gave a little laugh and looked around the room. "You know what," he said. "Maybe we should make this educational. Since Ms. Brooks has so many thoughts about training, maybe she would like to step onto the mat and show us how it should be done." Isaiah's head snapped toward his mother. "Mom," he whispered. Lena could hear the fear in it, not because he thought she would lose, but because he knew exactly what Wade was trying to do. It was not an invitation. It was a trap dressed up as a joke. A few parents shifted uncomfortably. Donna let out a small laugh, then stopped when nobody joined her. Wade spread his hands like he was being generous. "Nothing serious. Just a light spar. I will go easy." Lena studied him. She noticed how relaxed he looked now, how the tension had left his shoulders because he believed he had found a way to take control back. He thought he could embarrass her in front of the kids, turn her concern into a lesson about staying in her lane, and have everyone laughing by the end of the night. That was Wade's real motivation. It was never just about martial arts. It was about being the person who decided whose voice mattered in that room. Lena looked down at Isaiah. He was standing very still, his hands curled into fists at his sides. She saw every night he had come home quieter than before. She saw Malik staring at the mat. She saw Elena, a 13-year-old girl with braces and a purple belt, watching from the back like she wanted to believe an adult might finally say enough. Lena took off her coat, folded it once, and placed it on the bench. "Not tonight," she said. Wade's smile widened. He thought he had won. He thought he had won. Then Lena added, "Tomorrow evening, same time, same mat. And if we are doing this in front of everyone, we are going to do it honestly." Wade tilted his head. "Honestly? If you win," Lena said, "I will tell every parent here that I was wrong to question you." A murmur moved through the room. Wade nodded, already enjoying himself. "And if I lose?" Lena stepped closer to the mat, close enough that Wade could see there was no anger shaking in her hands, no panic in her face, nothing but a calm he could not read. "Then you apologize," she said, "not just to me. To Isaiah, to Malik, to every kid you used as a punching bag because you thought nobody would call you on it. And you do it without excuses, without saying people misunderstood you, without blaming pressure or discipline or the way you were raised. You apologize because you were wrong." For a few seconds, Wade did not answer. The whole room seemed to lean toward him. Then he smiled again, but it was thinner now. "Fine," he said. "I accept." Lena picked up her coat, put one hand on Isaiah's shoulder, and looked Wade right in the eye. "Good," she said. "Then do not be late." She walked out with Isaiah beside her, and neither of them spoke until they reached the parking lot. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the strobe lights made the wet pavement shine like black glass. Isaiah finally looked up at her and said, "Mum, you do know he is really good, right?" Lena unlocked the car, then paused with her hand on the door. For a second, she looked tired, not weak, just tired in the way somebody looks when an old part of their life has knocked on the door after years of silence. Then she smiled a little. After years of silence. Then she smiled a little. "Baby," she said, "so am I." And as they drove home through the rain with Harbour Ridge shrinking in the rearview mirror, Isaiah had no idea that his mother had just agreed to step back into the one world she had spent 15 years trying to forget. Lena did not say much for the first few minutes after that. The windshield wipers moved back and forth across the glass, steady and tired, pushing rain into dark ribbons at the edge of the road, while Isaiah sat beside her with his gym bag on his lap and about 100 questions trapped behind his teeth. Finally, he looked over and said, "So, when you said you were good, did you mean good like you took a few classes in college, or good like you are about to get us banned from Harbour Ridge forever?" Lena let out a small laugh, the kind that surprised even her because she had not felt like laughing much lately. "Honestly," she said, keeping her eyes on the road, "both are possible." Isaiah stared at her. "Mom, what? That is not an answer. It is the answer you are getting while I am driving in the rain." He folded his arms and tried to look annoyed, but Lena could see the curiosity working all over his face. He had spent 12 years knowing her as the mom who packed his lunch with little notes inside, the mom who fixed loose buttons with safety pins because she never remembered to buy a sewing kit, the mom who worked double shifts at St. Key, Agnes Medical Center, and still somehow managed to show up at every school thing that mattered. To Isaiah, Lena was strong in the ordinary ways, the kind that did not make noise. She knew how to stretch $20 into dinner for 3 nights, how to sit with someone who was scared in a hospital room without pretending everything would be fine, how to keep a straight face when a landlord tried to bluff her about a lease. But fighting, real fighting, was not part of the picture he had of her. Not until now. By the time they reached their apartment, the rain had softened into that misty Pacific Northwest kind of drizzle that does not really fall so much as hang in the air and make everything smell like wet pavement and cedar trees. The place was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building with narrow stairs and a broken buzzer nobody had fixed since Lena moved in. It was small, but it was warm. There were plants in the kitchen window, 3 of them slightly overwatered. A crooked bookshelf filled with medical textbooks, mystery novels and Isaiah's comic books, and a refrigerator covered in magnets from places they had never been because Isaiah liked collecting them from thrift stores. Lena turned on the kitchen light, set her keys down, and started moving to the familiar routine, hanging up her coat, checking the mail, opening the fridge like dinner might magically appear if she looked hard enough. Isaiah did not move. He stood in the doorway with his arms still folded. "You used to fight, didn't you?" Lena kept her back to him for a second. "I used to do a lot of things before you were born." That is still not an answer. You are getting very good at that sentence. "I learned from you." That got her. She turned around, and for a second the whole room went quiet. Isaiah was not scared anymore. Not exactly. He was looking at her the way kids look at their parents when they suddenly realize there is a whole person there they have never met. Lena knew she could keep avoiding it. She had gotten very good at avoiding it. She had spent years building a life when nobody asked about the old bruises on her shins, the scar near her eyebrow, the framed newspaper clipping folded at the bottom of a storage bin she had not opened in almost a decade. She had told herself the past was over, that it belonged to another Lena, somebody younger and louder, in a way she no longer knew how to be. But Isaiah had seen what happened tonight. He had watched Wade Mercer try to use his mother as a joke, and if Lena said nothing now, he would carry that uncertainty into tomorrow. So she pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat down. "Okay," she said. "Sit." Isaiah sat across from her, suddenly serious. Lena rested both hands around a mug that still had a little cold coffee in the bottom. "When I was younger," she began, "before I worked at the hospital, before I got smart enough to understand that 24-hour shifts and a 12-year-old do not mix well, I fought professionally." Isaiah blinked. "Like professionally?" "Yes, like on TV." Lena looked down at the mug. "Sometimes." He was quiet for a beat, then said, "You were keeping that from me. I was trying to keep it away from you." "Why?" That question landed differently. Lena leaned back and looked toward the window where water slid down the glass in thin, crooked lines. "Because fighting gave me some of the best years of my life," she said, "and it also gave me some of the hardest. Those 2 things can live in the same place, Isaiah. That is what nobody tells you when you are young." She told him that she had started training at 19 in the cramped old gym called Iron House, down near the train tracks in South Tacoma, back when the building still had a dented metal door and a sign so faded you could barely read it from the street. The gym belonged to a woman named Delia Ramos, a former boxer with silver streaks in her hair, a bad knee, and the kind of voice that could make grown men stop talking without raising above a whisper. Delia had seen Lena one afternoon after a long shift at a grocery store, standing outside the gym in a raincoat, watching through the window while people hit pads and moved around the mat. Lena had not planned to go in. She was just curious. But Delia opened the door, looked at her, and said, "You going to stand there all night, or are you going to come inside and stop pretending you are not interested?" Lena remembered being embarrassed, but she went in anyway. The first thing Delia taught her was not how to punch. It was how to breathe. "People think fighting starts with the hands," Delia used to say. "It starts with the moment somebody tries to make you afraid, and you decide they do not get to own that part of you." Lena was good almost immediately, not because she was the biggest person in the room, because she was not, and not because she had some wild temper, because she did not. She was good because she watched. She watched shoulders. She watched feet. She listened to breathing. She understood patterns the way some people understood music. Other fighters came at her loud, fast, full of energy, and Lena would stand there looking almost bored until the exact second they made a mistake. Then she moved. Delia used to say Lena fought like a tide pulling backward before it came in. Quiet, patient, impossible to rush. That was where the nickname came from, the undertow. Isaiah sat there staring at her with his mouth slightly open. People called you the undertow? Lena gave him a look. Do not get excited. It sounds cooler than it was. Mom, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard. You are 12. Your standards are low. But she smiled, and for the first time that night the smile reached all the way into her eyes. She told him about the little fights at first, crowded local cards where the lights were too bright and the folding chairs were too close to the cage, where people brought their cousins and their co-workers and yelled advice nobody asked for. She told him about the first time she won in front of a crowd, how her legs felt like water afterward, how Delia hugged her so hard she nearly cracked a rib, then immediately said, "Do not get sentimental. You dropped your right hand twice." She told him about traveling for bigger fights, about cheap hotel rooms and airport food, about learning to sleep through noise and tune out people who thought confidence meant talking louder than everyone else. Then, after a while, Lena stopped smiling. Isaiah noticed. "What happened?" he asked softly. Lena turned the mud between her palms. "I got good," she said. "Really good. Better than I ever expected. I won regional titles, then national ones. I got signed by a bigger promotion, and for a few years, people knew my name before I walked into a room. I was not famous, like movie star famous, nothing like that, but in that world, people knew me. I had a picture on the cover of a sports magazine once. Your Uncle Daniel bought every copy at the grocery store and tried to sell them to neighbors for $5 each." Isaiah smiled. "Did people buy them?" "No. Mrs. Maderwist." Fletcher across the hall gave him $2 and a muffin because she felt bad for him. For a moment, Lena could hear her brother laughing again, loud and reckless and impossible to ignore. Daniel had been 3 years younger than her, all charm and bad decisions, the kind of person who could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and somebody's leftover fries. He had never missed one of Lena's fights if he could help it. He would sit in the front row wearing a shirt with her face printed on it, even though Lena begged him not to, and he would yell things like, "That is my sister," until people near him started jeering too. He was embarrassing, loyal, exhausting, and the person who believed in her before she believed in herself. "The last big fight I had," Lena said, her voice slowing, "was supposed to be the biggest night of my career. I had made it to the final for a world title. We were in Las Vegas, and I had been training for months. Delia said I was ready. Everybody said I was ready. Daniel called me that afternoon and told me he had a surprise." Isaiah leaned forward. "What kind of surprise?" Lena looked at him, and something in her face changed. "He said he was flying in." The room seemed colder after that. Lena told him Daniel had been driving to the airport with 2 friends when a truck ran a red light in the rain. Daniel never made it onto the plane. He never made it to Nevada. He never got to sit in the front row and scream her name one more time. Lena got the call in a locker room 15 minutes before she was supposed to walk out under the lights. She remembered the sound of someone knocking on the door. She remembered Delia standing there with a face she had never seen before, pale and broken, and trying too hard to stay calm. She remembered thinking, for one stupid second, that maybe Daniel had missed his flight and Delia was just going to tell her he was not coming. Then Delia said the words, and the world split into before and after. "I did not fight that night," Lena said. "I could not even stand up. I sat on the floor of that locker room with tape already wrapped around my hands, and all I could think was that Daniel had been on his way to watch me chase something that suddenly felt completely meaningless." Isaiah did not say anything. He just reached across the table and put his hand over hers. Lena swallowed. "After the funeral, everybody told me to take time. They said I would come back when I was ready, but I could not go near a gym without hearing his voice. I could not hear a crowd without thinking about all the things he would never get to see. So I left. I stopped returning calls. I stopped watching fights. I packed my belts and trophies into a bin, got a job, moved into a smaller apartment, and told myself I was done with that life." Isaiah looked down at their hands. "Did you quit because you were sad?" Lena thought about it. "Partly," she said, "but mostly because I was afraid. Not of getting hurt. I had been hurt plenty of times. I was afraid of caring about something that much again. I was afraid that if I went back into that world, I would have to feel all of it." Isaiah nodded slowly, like he understood more than she expected. Then he said, "So why are you going back tomorrow?" Lena looked at him, and this time her answer came without hesitation. "Because I am not going back for a title. I am not going back because I miss being the undertow. I am going because a man who has no business teaching children thinks he can make you feel small, and I need you to see something." Isaiah waited. "What?" Lena squeezed his hand. "Being calm is not the same as being weak. Walking away is not the same as being afraid. And standing up for yourself does not always mean you have to hurt someone. Sometimes it means you make them face what they have been doing." Isaiah was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Are you going to hurt Coach Wade?" Lena shook her head. "No. Can you?" She lifted one eyebrow. "Isaiah, I am just asking. I know. And that is exactly why I am not answering." He grinned despite himself. And for the first time since they left the academy, some of the tension in his shoulders loosened. Later that night, after Isaiah had gone to bed, Lena sat alone on the living room floor with an old plastic storage bin in front of her. It had been shoved behind winter blankets and a broken lamp, hidden in the back of the hall closet where she rarely had to look at it. The lid creaked when she opened it. Inside were old fight posters, newspaper clippings, a pair of gloves with cracked leather, a blue robe with her name stitched on the back, and 2 championship belts wrapped in towels. She touched the edge of one belt with her fingertips and felt memories rise up so fast they almost knocked the air out of her. The lights, the noise, Delia shouting instructions from outside the cage, Daniel's voice cutting through everything else. For years, Lena had thought strength meant closing that box and never opening it again. But sitting there in the quiet apartment, she understood something she had not been ready to admit. She had not buried the past. She had just been carrying it alone. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She almost ignored it, but the name on the screen made her pause. Delia Ramos. Lena stared at it for a second before answering. "You still have the same number," Lena said. Delia's voice came through low and dry. "You still answer the phone like you were doing me a favor." Lena laughed once, softly. "How did you hear?" "A woman named Marissa Carter called the gym. She said some black belt with a fragile ego challenged you to a public sparring match." Lena rubbed her forehead. "News travels fast. In Tacoma, please." News travels faster than an unpaid parking ticket. Lena could picture Delia in the old Ironhouse office, probably sitting beneath the same cracked clock that had been wrong for 12 years. "I do not need a lecture," Lena said. "Good, because I do not have the patience to give one. I just need to know why you said yes." Lena looked down at the championship belt in her lap. "Because he has been doing this to kids," she said. "Isaiah, Malik, other kids. He picks at them until they start believing he is right about them. And everybody acts like that is discipline, because he has a black belt and a loud voice." Delia was quiet for a moment. "And you think beating him fixes that?" "No," Lena said. "I think letting him humiliate me in front of them makes it worse." Delia let out a slow breath. "Fair." Then she added, "Just remember something. You do not have to become the person you were to protect the people you love." That woman was brave, but she was hurting too. Lena looked toward Isaiah's room. "I know. Do you?" Delia asked. "Because tomorrow he is going to try to get inside your head. Men like that always do. They cannot stand being challenged, so they start reaching for whatever they think will make you lose your balance. Do not give him that." Lena closed her eyes. "I will not." "And Lena? Yeah? Do not go easy on him just because he looks scared at the end." Lena laughed, a real laugh this time. "There she is," Delia said. "I was wondering if you still had a sense of humor." The next morning, Harbor Ridge Combat Academy felt different before Lena even walked inside. The usual chatter in the lobby had been replaced by that awkward, low buzz people make when they all know something is coming, but do not know whether they are excited or ashamed for wanting to watch it. Somebody had posted about the sparring match in the private parents group, and by noon half the neighborhood seemed to know. A few parents had sent Lena messages pretending to be concerned while quietly hoping she would back out. One of them read, "I'm sure Coach Wade did not mean anything by it. Maybe this can all be resolved without making things worse." Lena stared at that message for a full minute before deleting it. People loved the phrase "making things worse" when what they really meant was, "Please do not force us to acknowledge that something is already wrong." She got to work early, but it was hard to focus. The hospital was busy, fluorescent lights humming overhead, carts rolling down the hallway, call buttons chiming from rooms where people needed water, blankets, pain medication, reassurance. Lena moved through it all with the calm efficiency everyone trusted her for. But underneath that calm, Something old had started waking up. Not anger exactly. Focus. Her co-worker Beth noticed it while they were restocking supplies. "You look like you are either about to ask for a raise or bury a body," Beth said. Lena gave her a look. "I have a parent-teacher thing tonight." Beth leaned against the supply cart. "That is not a parent-teacher face. That is a somebody just made a bad decision face." Lena hesitated, then told her the short version. Beth listened without interrupting, which was rare for Beth. When Lena finished, Beth shook her head. "So this guy wants to spy you in front of kids because you called him out. Apparently. And he thinks that makes him look good. Apparently." Beth stared at her. "You are going to destroy him, right?" Lena picked up a box of gauze. "I am going to demonstrate conflict resolution." Beth smiled slowly. "That is nurse language for yes." Around 4 that afternoon, Marissa Carter found Lena in the academy parking lot. Marissa was standing beside an older blue sedan, twisting the strap of her purse in both hands. She looked like she had not slept much. "Lena," she said, "can I talk to you for a second?" Lena nodded. Marissa glanced toward the building. "I wanted to say thank you for yesterday. I should have spoken up months ago, maybe years ago. Malik comes home from class and tells me he is fine, but I can tell he is not. He has been asking to quit." Lena felt something tighten in her chest. "I am sorry," she said. Marissa shook her head. "Do not be sorry. You are doing what the rest of us should have done." She looked down at the pavement. "I am just scared. Wade has friends on the board. He knows everybody. If this goes bad, he could make things harder for the kids." Lena understood exactly what she meant. That was how men like Wade lasted so long. Not because everyone agreed with them, but because enough people decided the cost of challenging them might be worse than the cost of staying quiet. "I cannot promise he will not be angry," Lena said. "But I can promise this. He is already making things harder for the kids. The difference is, now people are going to see it." Marissa looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Malik made me promise I would be there." Lena smiled gently. "Then let him see his mum there too." When Lena walked into the academy that evening, the place was packed. There were more parents than usual, more students than usual, and a few faces she had never seen before who were clearly somebody's cousin, neighbor, or friend who had come because word had spread. Mr. Mistar, Hans, stood near the front desk looking like a man who regretted every decision that had led him to this moment. He approached Lena before she reached the mat. "Ms. Brooks," he said quietly, "I want to make sure everyone understands this is a controlled sparring demonstration. No head contact, no excessive force. I have asked Coach Wade to keep it professional." Lena looked past him. Wade was standing in the center of the mat, stretching his shoulders in slow circles, soaking up the attention like it was sunlight. "Did he agree?" she asked. Mr. Han hesitated. That was answer enough. Lena turned back to him. "Then you should know something," she said. "I will keep it professional. Whether he does is up to him." Mr. Han looked at her as if he wanted to ask more, but he did not. Maybe he sensed there were things about Lena that did not belong in a quick conversation by the front desk. Maybe he finally understood that silence had a cost, too. Isaiah was waiting near the benches, dressed in his uniform, his belt tied a little crooked, because his hands had been shaking when he did it. Lena walked over and fixed it for him. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, then immediately shook his head. He nodded, then immediately shook his head. "Not really." "That is okay. What if everybody laughs?" Lena looked around the room. There were people whispering, people watching, people trying to pretend they were not watching. Then she crouched down so she was eye level with him. "Listen to me. They can laugh if they want. They can make up their minds before they know the truth. That is on them. But you do not have to carry their opinion like it belongs to you." Isaiah looked at her. "Are you scared?" Lena thought about lying. She almost did. Then she shook her head. "I am not scared of him," she said. Then she shook her head. "I am not scared of him," she said. "I am scared of what this brings back. But being scared does not mean you stop. It just means you pay attention." Isaiah swallowed, then hugged her hard. "Okay," he said into her shoulder. Lena held him for a moment, longer than usual, because some hugs are not meant to fix anything. They are just meant to remind you that you are not alone. When she stood, Wade Mercer was watching from the center of the mat. He had changed into his black uniform, his belt tied perfectly, his hair still dry despite the rain outside. The crowd made a circle around the blue mats, leaving a wide open space between them. Wade raised his hands for quiet, then slowly the room settled. "Thank you all for coming," he said, smiling like he was hosting a charity event. "As most of you know, there was a disagreement during class yesterday. Ms. Brooks feels strongly that my methods are unfair, and in the interest of transparency, she has agreed to demonstrate her concerns." Lena almost smiled. He was good at language. He could turn cruelty into instruction, bias into discipline, and a public humiliation into transparency. But words only worked when nobody had the nerve to look past them. Wade turned toward her. "You still want to do this?" he asked. Lena stepped onto the mat, barefoot now, her old sneakers tucked neatly beside the wall. The second her feet touched the rubber floor, something inside her settled. The smell of disinfectant, the faint give of the mat beneath her weight, the hum of people waiting around the edges of the room, all of it was familiar in a way she had not expected. For 15 years, she had thought walking back onto a mat would break her open. Instead, it made her feel steady, not young again, not untouched. Just steady. Wade tilted his head. "Last chance," he said. Lena looked at him, then at Isaiah, then at Malik and the other kids standing around the edge of the room. "No," she said, "this is your last chance." Wade's smile faded just a little. "Mr. Deck." Hans stepped forward to explain the rules, but nobody was really listening. The room had gone still in that particular way it does, before a storm breaks, when every person can feel that something is about to change, even if they do not yet understand what it is. Wade moved into his stance first, loose and confident, bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet. Lena stood across from him with her hands low at her sides, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm. A few people exchanged looks. To them, she probably looked unprepared. Too still. To them, she probably looked unprepared. Too still. Too ordinary. Wade gave a little chuckle. "You sure you know how to stand?" he asked. Lena did not blink. "You sure you know how to stop talking?" Somewhere near the back, someone tried not to laugh. Wade heard it. His jaw tightened. Then Mr. Gann. Han raised one hand between them, looked from Wade to Lena, and said, "Begin." For the first second, nobody moved. Wade stood light on his feet, shoulders loose, chin tucked just enough to look practiced, while Lena stayed still across from him with her hands relaxed and her breathing slow. It was almost funny, if you did not know what was happening. Wade looked like a man ready for a magazine cover. Lena looked like a woman waiting in line at the grocery store. That was exactly why he smiled. He circled left, eyes fixed on her, probably expecting her to tense up, raise her hands wrong, take a big nervous step backward, give him something he could use. "You can put your hands up," he said. "I know this can feel overwhelming for beginners." Lena did not move. "You can throw a punch," she replied. "I know silence can feel overwhelming for some people." A few kids near the wall made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a laugh. Wade's face tightened. Then he came forward with a fast, low kick, not hard enough to injure her, but quick enough to show everybody he meant business. Lena shifted her weight half an inch, barely moving at all, and his foot sliced through empty air. Wade reset immediately. The crowd did not react at first. Most of them probably assumed he had missed on purpose. He threw a jab next, then another, then a quick hook that stopped just short of her shoulder. Lena leaned back with the smallest movement, letting his glove pass in front of her face by inches. No panic, no flinch, no dramatic dodge, just a quiet adjustment, like she had seen the punch coming before Wade had even decided to throw it. He stopped and looked at her. "You got lucky," he said. Lena nodded once. "That is usually what people say when they miss." Wade grinned, but the grin came slower this time. He bounced forward again and threw a combination. Left hand, right hand, low kick, then a high roundhouse meant to make the crowd gasp. Lena stepped aside. The kick missed. He followed with a spinning back fist. Lena ducked. He came in close with a body shot. She turned her hip and let the punch slide past her ribs. The room began to change. At first, the parents had been whispering. Then they stopped whispering. Then they stopped shifting in their chairs. The only sound left was Wade's feet on the mat, and the soft scrape of Lena's bare soles as she moved exactly when she needed to, never more. Isaiah stood near the edge of the mat with his hands pressed together under his chin. Malik had moved closer to his mother. Even Mr. Marth, Han, who had started the match looking like he wanted to disappear into his own office, was now staring at Lena with both hands hanging at his sides. Wade threw another kick, harder this time. Lena took one small step back. He punched. She tilted her head. He tried to trap her near the edge of the circle. She turned, slipped past him, and ended up in the center again without ever raising her voice or breaking her calm expression. It was not just that she was avoiding him. People were starting to understand that she was leading him. Wade was chasing her, but somehow every time he attacked, he ended up exactly where she wanted him to be. Like a man trying to grab smoke and getting angry because his hands kept coming back empty. "Come on," Wade snapped, breathing a little harder now. "You are not going to fight." Lena looked at him, eyes steady. "I am fighting." Wade scoffed. "You call this fighting? I call it letting you show everyone who you are." That one landed harder than any punch. Wade's face went red. He glanced around the room and saw what Lena saw. The people who had come expecting a joke were no longer smiling. Donna Whitcomb was standing with her arms crossed, watching with a look she had not worn yesterday. Trevor, the blonde boy Wade had always encouraged, was staring at his instructor with confusion instead of admiration. And along the back wall, the kids Wade had treated like they were always one mistake away from disappointment were watching Lena with something close to hope. Wade could not stand it. He came forward faster, his movements losing that polished, showy confidence. The next flurry was rougher. He threw a hard jab at Lena's face, followed by a hook and a knee, then another kick that came in too wide because he was trying to force her to react. Lena moved through it all like water slipping around stones. She did not rush. She did not scramble. She did not look scared. Each time he threw something, she was already gone before it arrived. The old rhythm came back to her without asking permission. Watch the shoulders. Watch the hips. Listen to the breath. Wait for the mistake. Somewhere deep in her memory, she could hear Delia Ramos saying, "Do not chase the fight, Lena. Let the fight come to you." And for the first time in 15 years, Lena did not feel grief when she remembered it. She felt grounded. Wade threw another right hand. Lena slipped outside it. He turned into a spinning kick, faster now, angrier, trying to catch her with the heel. She leaned away and the kick missed by less than an inch. The crowd gasped. Wade landed badly, stumbled for a second, then caught himself. He looked embarrassed, worse than embarrassed. He looked like he had just realized the room was no longer seeing the version of him he had worked so hard to sell. "Stop dancing around," he barked. "You want to make a point? Then make it." Lena looked at him for a long moment. "You have spent years telling kids that losing control makes them weak," she said. "So why are you the only one in here who cannot control himself?" A silence fell over the mat. Not a nervous silence anymore. A real one. Heavy. Honest. Wade's nostrils flared. "You do not know anything about me." Lena's voice stayed low. "I know enough. I know you pick the kids who will not fight back. I know you call it discipline when you embarrass them. I know you are brave when you are standing over someone smaller, quieter, younger, or more afraid than you." Wade took a step toward her. "Careful." "No," Lena said. "You be careful. Because everyone is watching now." That did it. Something broke loose in Wade's face. It was not skill anymore. That did it. Something broke loose in Wade's face. It was not skill anymore. It was anger. The kind of anger that came from feeling exposed. He rushed her with a combination that was faster than before, but sloppier too, his left shoulder dropping, his feet crossing slightly as he tried to close the distance. Lena saw it all. She saw the frustration in his jaw, the sweat at his temples, the little hitch in his breathing before each strike. He was not fighting her anymore. He was fighting the fact that she would not become the person he needed her to be. He needed her frightened. He needed her to be. He needed her clumsy. He needed her to fall apart so the world would go back to making sense, but Lena was not falling apart. She had already done that once, years ago, alone on a locker room floor with tape around her hands and a phone call that split her life in two. Compared to that, Wade Mercer was just a loud man with bad balance. He stepped in with a hard overhand right. Lena slipped to the side. He spun, trying to catch her with a back kick. Lena moved again. Then he came in with the move he had clearly been saving for the finish, a spinning heel kick thrown with every bit of pride, frustration, and desperation he had left. It was fast. It was powerful. It was also careless. The moment his weight shifted, Lena knew exactly what he had done wrong. He had committed too much. His upper body had turned before his base foot was ready. He was chasing a knockout, not a clean strike. For a split second, everything slowed. Isaiah saw his mother move. Malik saw Wade's foot lift off the mat. Mr. Hahn took one step forward. And Lena, calm as a still lake, stepped just outside the arc of Wade's kick, placed one open hand lightly against the back of his calf, and guided the momentum he had already created. That was all. No punch. No dramatic throw. No Brynick throw. No violent slam. Just a small redirection at exactly the right moment. Wade's body twisted. His planted foot slid. His arms flailed once in the air, and then he hit the mat hard enough to make the whole room flinch. For 2 seconds, nobody made a sound. Wade lay there staring at the ceiling, chest rising and falling, trying to understand how he had ended up on his back. Lena stood over him, not gloating, not smiling, not even breathing hard. She looked down at him with the same quiet steadiness she had shown from the beginning. Then Isaiah whispered, almost to himself, "Whoa!" That broke the silence. A few kids gasped. Someone near the back said, "Did she just do that with one hand?" Marissa covered her mouth. Malik looked at his mother with wide eyes, then back at Lena, like he had just watched something impossible happen. Wade pushed himself up on one elbow, his face flushed dark with humiliation. "That was a fluke," he said. Lena nodded slowly, then stand up and try again. Wade looked at her. He wanted to. Everyone could see it. He wanted to jump back to his feet and charge at her, because that was what he knew. But now he had seen something he could not unsee. Lena was not lucky. She was not guessing. She was not a parent who wandered onto the mat by accident. She was watching him the way an experienced fighter watches someone who has already told them everything they need to know. Wade got to his feet slowly. The room waited. Mr. Hahn looked like he was about to call the match, but Wade lifted one hand. "No," he said, "we are not done." Lena did not move. "You are right," she said. "We are not." Wade took a breath and tried to settle himself. He widened his stance. He raised his guard. For the first time that evening, he looked less like a showman and more like a man who understood he might be in trouble. He circled Lena again, slower now, careful, but his confidence was gone. Every time she shifted, he hesitated. Every time she looked at his shoulders, he changed his mind. The crowd could see it too. He had been the one controlling the room 10 minutes earlier. Now he was reacting to her. And that was when Lena finally lifted her hands. Not high, not dramatic, just enough. The posture changed everything. Her shoulders settled, her eyes sharpened, her feet found their old rhythm. There was something in the way she stood that made the air around her feel different. Even people who had never watched a professional fight could sense it. The woman in front of them had been holding back. Wade saw it. His face went pale. "Who are you?" he asked. Lena looked at him, and for a moment Daniel's voice came back to her from years ago, laughing in a crowded arena, yelling her name like he believed there was nothing in the world she could not do. She felt the old pain, but it did not pull her under this time. It stood beside her. "I am someone you should have treated with respect before you knew anything about me," she said. Wade came forward one last time. This time Lena did not just move away. She slipped his first punch, caught his wrist with one hand, turned her body, and used his forward momentum to bring him down again, controlled and clean. His arm pinned lightly enough that he could not move, but not hard enough to hurt him. It happened so fast the crowd did not understand it until Wade was flat on the mat, staring at the ceiling with Lena kneeling beside him, calm as ever. Mr. Hahn stepped forward. "That is enough," he said, his voice shaking slightly. Lena released Wade immediately and stood. Wade rolled onto his side, breathing hard. No one cheered at first. No one wanted to be the first person to speak, because they all knew something bigger than a sparring match had just ended. Then Malik started clapping. It was quiet at clapping. It was quiet at first, just two hands coming together near the wall, but the sound carried. Elena joined him. Then Isaiah. Then Marissa. Then more students, more parents, until the whole academy was filled with applause. Not wild applause, not cruel applause. Something deeper. Something that sounded like relief. Wade stood slowly, his eyes moving around the room. He saw the people who had once laughed at his jokes. He saw the parents who had nodded when he called their children champions. He saw the kids who had spent months shrinking whenever he raised his voice. And he saw that they were not afraid of him in that moment. That was the part he could not handle. Enough, he snapped, but nobody stopped clapping. Mr. Hand stepped forward then, and this time he did not look nervous. He looked tired. Tired in the way someone looks when they have spent too long pretending they did not see what was right in front of them. No, Mr. Hand said, not enough. Not until you say what you owe them. Wade turned toward him. You are taking her side. Mr. Hand's expression did not change. I am taking responsibility for what I allowed in my school. That hit the room in a different way. The parents looked at Mr. Hand. The students looked at him too. It was not a full apology, not yet, but it was the first honest thing he had said all night. Lena stepped forward, not close enough to threaten Wade, just close enough that he could not pretend she was not there. We had an agreement, she said. Wade looked at her with raw anger in his eyes. You set me up. Lena shook her head. No, you set yourself up. I just stopped looking away. Wade's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced at Isaiah. He glanced at Malik. He glanced at Marissa, whose face was wet with tears she had clearly been trying to hide. Finally, he looked at Lena again. The fight had left him sweaty and shaken, but it was not the fall that had broken him. It was the fact that he had nowhere left to hide. I was tough on them, he said. Lena did not move. That is not an apology, Wade swallowed. I pushed them because, he stopped. Everybody waited, because I thought they needed it. Lena's voice was quiet. No, you pushed them because it made you feel important. Wade looked down. For a long time, the only sound was rain against the windows. Then he said, I was wrong. The room stayed still. Wade took a breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower, less polished, more human. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about Isaiah. I was wrong about Malik and Elena. And every kid I made feel like they had to earn basic respect from me. I told myself I was preparing them for the world, but really I was taking out my own anger on people who trusted me. He looked toward Malik first. I am sorry. Then he looked at Isaiah. I am sorry. His voice shook a little when he turned toward the other students. I am sorry to all of you. Nobody rushed to forgive him. Nobody needed to. Lena could see that some of the parents wanted the moment wrapped up neatly, tied with a bow, something they could take home and call a lesson. But life was not like that. A real apology did not erase what happened. It just opened the door to doing better. Lena looked at Wade and said, What you do after tonight matters more than what you say right now. Wade nodded slowly. For once, he had nothing clever to say. Then Isaiah stepped forward. He had been standing near the wall the whole time, watching his mother like she had become someone from one of his comic books. His eyes were shining. He looked at Lena, then at the crowd and said, My mom used to be a fighter. Lena turned toward him. Isaiah, but he was too excited to stop. Not just a fighter, he said. She was the undertow. The words moved through the room like an electric current. A few older parents looked confused. Then one man near the back, a guy wearing a mariner's cap, pulled out his phone. Wait, he said. The undertow? Lena Brooks? He started typing. Another parent leaned over his shoulder. Then her face changed. Oh my God, she whispered. That is her! More phones came out. People searched. Old fight photos appeared on screens, grainy clips, magazine covers. A younger Lena standing in a cage with sweat on her face and a championship belt around her waist. Her dark hair braided tight. Her expression calm and unreadable. One of the kids said, That is really you. Lena looked around at all of them. At the sudden awe, the shock, the embarrassed faces of people who had thought she was nothing more than a tired single mom in hospital scrubs. For a second, she wanted to disappear. The old instinct came back, the one that told her attention was dangerous, that being seen always came with a price. But then she looked at Isaiah. He was smiling so wide it made her chest ache. And Lena understood that this was not about being recognized. It was about letting her sons see that the parts of her she had hidden were not something to be ashamed of. Yeah, she said softly. That was me. The man in the mariner's cap looked at Wade, then back at Lena. You fought Renata Silva in Portland, he said. I watched that fight. Lena gave a small smile. That was a long time ago. You won in the 4th round. You have a good memory. Wade stood a few feet away, still silent. He looked at the phones, the old photos, the faces around him, and then at Lena. The woman he had tried to embarrass was not just better than him. She had lived through things he knew nothing about. She had stepped away from a world he could only dream of entering, then walked back onto a mat after 15 years and handled him without anger, without cruelty, without needing to prove anything except that he was wrong. That was probably the hardest part for him. Lena did not need the crowd to know she was the undertow before she beat him. She did not need a title, a belt, or a story. She had already won the moment she refused to let him turn her son into a lesson in shame. Mr. Hand cleared his throat. Harbour Ridge will be closed for classes tomorrow, he said. We are going to meet with the parents and students. We are going to talk about what happened here and what needs to change. A few parents nodded. Donna Whitcomb looked uncomfortable. But she did not look uncomfortable. But she did not look away this time. Marissa walked over to Lena and hugged her without asking. Lena held her back. Thank you, Marissa said into her shoulder. Malik has been asking if he is good enough since the first week he started here. Maybe now he will stop asking. Lena looked at Malik, who was standing a little straighter than before. He was always good enough, she said. Marissa pulled back and nodded. I know. Wade stayed near the edge of the mat while the crowd slowly began to break apart. Some parents came over to Lena, awkward and sincere, offering apologies for not saying anything sooner. A few admitted they had noticed the way Wade treated certain kids, but convinced themselves it was none of their business. Lena listened because she knew people needed room to tell the truth once they finally found the courage to do it. But she did not make it easy for them either. Next time, she said to one father who kept rubbing the back of his neck, do not wait for somebody else to take the risk. Your kid is watching what you do with uncomfortable truth. He nodded, eyes down. You are right. Lena did not know whether he would change. She hoped he would. That was all anybody could do sometimes. Hope people meant what they said when it became inconvenient to stay the same. By the time Lena and Isaiah walked outside, the rain had stopped. The pavement was still wet, reflecting the yellow streetlights in long broken lines. Isaiah carried her old gym bag, which she had not even realized Delia had sent over earlier that day, through Marissa. Inside were her gloves, her wraps, and a folded note that simply said, "Still got it." Lena stood beside the car for a moment, looking back at Harbour Ridge through the glass doors. Wade was still inside, talking quietly with Mr. Hahn. He looked smaller somehow, not because he had lost a fight, but because the role he had built around himself had finally cracked. Isaiah leaned against her side. "Mom? Yeah? Are you going to fight again?" Lena looked at the old gym bag in his hands, then at the academy, then at the dark road stretching ahead of them. "I do not know," she said honestly. "Maybe not like before." Isaiah nodded. "But you could teach me." Lena smiled. "I can teach you. And Malik, maybe Malik too. And Elena?" Lena opened the car door. And Elena opened the car door. "You are making a whole class now." Isaiah grinned. "You would be a good coach." Lena looked at him for a second. "A good coach does not make kids afraid to make mistakes," she said. "A good coach helps them believe they can get better." Isaiah nodded like he was storing that away somewhere important. As they drove home, Lena felt something inside her loosen. The grief was still there. Daniel was still gone. The old life she had left behind could not be rebuilt exactly the way it had been. But for the first time in years, she did not feel like she was running from it either. She had not stepped onto that mat to become the undertow again. She stepped onto it because Isaiah needed to know that strength did not always look loud. And because every kid standing around that room needed to see that the person who gets underestimated is not always the person who loses. A month later, Harbour Ridge looked different. Not perfect, not magically healed, but different. Mr. Hahn brought in 2 outside instructors to review the program and work with the staff. Wade took time away from teaching while the academy met with parents and students. Some families left for good, and Lena did not blame them. Others stayed because they wanted to see whether change could be real. Wade eventually came back, but not as the man who had run the room before. He had to earn trust slowly, class by class, apology by apology, action by action. Some people said he deserved a second chance. Some said he should have been fired immediately. Lena understood both sides. Forgiveness was not the same thing as pretending nothing happened, and consequences were not the same thing as revenge. That was the uncomfortable part nobody liked talking about. What do you do when someone finally admits they were wrong, but the damage is already real? How much room do you give a person to change, and who gets to decide when they have done enough? Lena did not have an easy answer. She only knew that silence had protected Wade for too long, and whatever happened next had to protect the kids first. On Thursday evenings, Lena started teaching a free confidence and self-defense class at the community center 2 blocks from the diner. Nothing fancy, no championship banners, no gold letters on a uniform. Just borrowed mats, folding chairs, a squeaky fan in the corner, and kids learning how to stand with their feet under them, how to say no without apologizing, how to breathe when somebody tries to make them feel small. Malik came. Elena came. Isaiah never missed a class. Sometimes Delia showed up too, pretending she was only there to check the mats, then spending 40 minutes correcting everybody's footwork. And every now and then, when Lena looked across the room and saw those kids laughing, trying again after they messed up, cheering for each other instead of tearing each other down, she felt Daniel somewhere in the memory of it all, laughing the way he used to, proud and loud and impossible to ignore. Maybe that was the real victory, not Wade hitting the mat, not the phones coming out when people learned who Lena used to be, not even the apology. Maybe it was the moment a room full of kids learned that they did not have to become cruel to become strong. So what do you think? Did Wade deserve the chance to change after everything he did, or should Mr. Hahn have removed him from the academy the moment the truth came out? And if you were Lena, would you have taken that match, or would you have walked away and fought the battle another way? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because stories like this are never only about one bad coach or one brave mother. They're about what happens when good people finally stop confusing peace with silence. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit like, subscribe for more stories about courage, justice, and the quiet strength people carry when nobody's paying attention. And remember this, the loudest person in the room is not always the strongest one.